Today we're installing the stage 2.5 water methanol controller from Snow Performance. Stick around. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and today we're installing the Snow Performance Stage 2.5 water methanol controller on the Corvette Z06. And we've got the base kit that came with the larger trunk tank and all that stuff, but we're not going to run that. We're going to do a custom setup on this. And so I'm not going to touch on a bunch of the things that I've touched on in the past as far as wiring. I've got videos out there. I'll throw a link up in the corner to a playlist of some of the Snow Performance stuff that I've done in the past. We're going to be looking at some of the special things that we're doing on this setup, such as we're going to be utilizing the factory windshield washer tank instead of installing an external tank. And the nice thing about it is we're not going to be running, at least initially, enough water methanol injection on this setup to worry about having an external tank, whereas on the Super Auto, which is sitting over there, we've got that big like 10-gallon tank on that thing because we're doing direct port water methanol injection. That thing drinks it down. This one, we're just looking for a little bit cooler IATs. And so after we get done doing this installation, we're going to go through the steps of seeing at what size nozzle do we actually get to the point where we're running so rich that we need to retune. And I've got like 4 or 5 different nozzle sizes, and we're going to start with literally the smallest one that they make for this kit, which is the 0.5. And that one actually, I'm guessing, isn't going to need a tune, and even whenever we get up to like a 2 or a 4, we're probably going to be all right. Once we get to the 6 based on your setup, that's whenever we're going to start running too rich, whenever we start spraying water methanol. And this is a progressive controller, which is nice about it, so we can choose a start pressure to start injecting, and then a final pressure to have max injection. And a setup like this where we're running about 10 psi right now, we're going to up the boost later on, we'll probably start around 4 psi and then have max flow around 8. That way we're not always injecting every time, especially on a twin screw or a root style blower where you have boost a lot more often, whereas on a centrifugal or a turbo, you can lower that down a little bit because you control more of whenever you get into boost with throttle. As on this kind of setup, you're almost always getting into boost. So a couple things to keep in mind whenever you're doing a process like this: lay everything out, get an idea of what you're going to need. You might want some additional parts. In the case of this setup, it does not come with, at least this kit did not come with the nozzle that mounts into your windshield washer reservoir. So I bought that extra on the side because that's the way I wanted to do it. And we'll take a look at the installation of that here in a second. On top of it, the VC50, which is the gauge style controller on this one, has a built-in boost pressure sensor, but you can run an external because this is not going to be long enough. I'm going to end up cutting all of this off, adding a harness to run it and make it easy to disconnect this, because we'll have it mounted behind the stereo, which comes down. I've got a nice little plate that mounts it in there. And so because of that, we're going to go ahead and run the external pressure sensor, which is the standard Nitrous Express 0 to 100 psi pressure sensor. And in fact, I'm going to have links to all of this down at goatropegarage.com. I am a dealer for Snow Performance Nitrous Express, and so they've given me permission to go ahead and sell to you guys. And so I'm going to link a lot of the stuff that you'll see on the installations that I do with Snow Performance or Nitrous Express. And you can go over to goatropegarage.com and purchase through us, and that helps the channel out. We get a little money from that. And so if you're looking for a kit or you're wanting to replicate some of this stuff, jump over to goatropegarage.com, see what we got for sale. We're not going to put the whole catalog on there, just the things that we're featuring on the channel here itself. On top of getting the fitting that I talked about, I went ahead and got a couple shorter of the braided hoses. You have the option of running the braided steel lines or the nylon ones. I'll be honest with you, the nylon is 1,000 times easier to work with, and it doesn't look bad. Braided steel always looks good. It's top tier, and it gives you things like heat resistance and stuff like that that the nylon doesn't. But you have to plan ahead a little more, so it's always a good idea in these situations to kind of get your pump installed, things like that. See where you want to run the lines, because they come in different lengths: 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 5 foot, 15, etc. Figure that stuff out beforehand. Get all the parts kind of lined out and ready to go for whenever you do your installation. The additional thing that we're doing on this one is we're using the C7 plate, and I've got it mocked up. Actually, I've got it installed in there. It's a nice pump mounting plate that goes next to your windshield washer reservoir. Perfect location for doing this kind of setup that your pump mounts to in the fender well, out of the way, nice and hidden. And so we'll take a look at that here in a second, and I'll give you a tip or two about how to install that. And then we're going to use the throttle body spacer, but I'm still waiting on my pressure sensor right now. It'll probably be included in this video. And so we're just going to kind of get the pump section installed out of the way so we can get everything buttoned back up in the fender well. So let's take a look at that right now. We've got our line going up into the engine bay, zip tied to this bracket with our check valve back there on the outlet of the pump. And it's just the standard check valve that keeps it from vacuum pulling. And I'll tell you what, getting the pump installed on this bracket's a pain in the butt, so go ahead and install the pump on the bracket before you mount it up in here. Your life will be a lot easier. I've drilled a small hole in the bottom of our windshield washer reservoir to drain it out, and I'm getting ready to throw the unibit in here, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take it very slow though, because we don't want to overshoot the size of our adapter that we're pushing in there, because it is a compression adapter that basically you screw the collar down and it causes a seal. And instead of running the straight, I've put a 90 out of it. So we're going to 90 and then use a small hose over to our suction side of our pump. Oh, let's get underneath here. There it is. Drill a little bit and then we'll check. Got ways to go. Getting real close now, so we're going to go a little bit easier to make sure that we don't overshoot our hole size. And bingo. So now that we've got that in there, we're going to back up the top section with a wrench and then tighten this collar down by hand. Get it nice and snug, paying attention to which direction we're facing our line here. And honestly, I might go ahead and grab a pair of channel locks to help tighten this thing down to make sure it doesn't leak, but it's sealing up pretty good just from the looks of it. Okay, now we can go ahead and run our line. Perfect. Nice and clean. I like how that turned out. It's going to fit up behind the wheel well cover. Nice. Now that we've got this section ran and our section going up top, I'm going to go ahead and fill up our reservoir with windshield washer fluid again and check for leaks. Okay, so the factory reservoir holds over a gallon, which is nice. I'm not seeing any initial leaks right now, and so while that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and extend our pump wires up into the engine bay, get that part done, and once that's done, I can go ahead and button all this up, cover everything back up, and we're done in the wheel well. So we've got our wires extended, and I know what you're saying, Kyle, you've got green going to red. Why? Well, there's a method to the madness here, and that's because the output from the gauge that controls the pump or runs the pump is actually a green wire. And so this way, whenever we pull this up in the engine bay and we button all this up, we don't ever have to look at it again. We know that the green goes to the green. And as far as the black that's ground, it's any kind of chassis ground. If this were anything besides a Corvette, I would find something up in here to run it to. But Corvettes being what they are, Chassis grounds are not always the best. Sometimes you need to do a continuity check, and so for now I'm just running it up to the top of the engine bay along with everything else. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get these buttoned up out of the way with the zip tie or two, get everything cleaned up, close this area back off, put the tire back on, and drop it on the ground, because from this point on everything's going to be up in the engine bay or inside the car. Okay, on the top side we've got the physical installation done. Here's where our wiring came up along with our line. I've just got this zip tied up and around the filler neck for now, because we're going to do the electrical whenever the sensor comes in. Zip tied onto this bracket, onto this line, then we're going over to our spacer. Pay attention whenever it comes to your throttle plate spacer if you're on an LT4, because there's a lot going on with the blower on that side and the throttle control on this side, and this valve looks like some kind of bypass or EGR valve of some sort. So specifically, you got to put your nozzle in. Make sure that the filter from the nozzle is away. You want the jet port going into this, and you're going to need to use the top hole. The bottom hole is not going to work, and then you can't flip it over because you get into the pulley. So you're going to have the top hole, the nozzle, the extension with the narrow part of the extension towards the nozzle. The big part out, you want to get that clock so it sits right up against your controller for your throttle body. Then you have your adapter and your line. And in fact, this little bypass valve, whatever this unit is here, I had to loosen that thing up to get this threaded on. But that is the physical installation of our Snow Methanol Performance Kit on the LT4. Make sure if you haven't yet, subscribe, hit up the comments down below. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, things like that. We're gonna do another series where we kind of go over the electrical install, getting that gauge hooked up, testing the system out, etc., going from there. And then we will go into the tuning portion of it, as I said, where we go out, do some data logs, see what the different size jets, the effect that they have on our AFRs. The AFRs on this thing are dialed in pretty good right now, and so I'll be anxious to see how much richer each different size nozzle makes a difference. And then we'll get to the point where the nozzle is big enough that we actually have to do some tuning, and we'll go over tuning for water and methanol injection. So don't forget, as I said, to hit up goatropegarage.com, check out tuning101.com. That takes you right to our YouTube homepage where you can find all the playlists. That's the quickest way to find us on the internet, tuning101.com. Subscribe, check out the Patreon, check out Snow Performance Nitrous Express. Big shout out to them as always. I'm going to get back to it. You guys know the drill. ABT, always be tuning.